Hello, Kids Cook Real Food. Katie Kimball here for the Healthy Parenting Connector. And today we need to put our science geek hats on because we are talking to a researcher, a nutritionist, founder of a minerals company, and we're going to dig pretty deep on what's going on inside our bodies and our kids' bodies and how we can get our minerals back in balance. So Barton Scott, thank you so much for being here.
Katie, it's so good to be on with you.
Yeah, so I'm not even exactly sure where this conversation is going to go, and that's very unfamiliar to me. Typically, I kind of know what my interview guests will say to a certain extent. So I'm excited because today I actually get to learn too, which means I'm going to probably be asking a bajillion curious questions because that's how I roll when I'm learning new stuff. So I'm really looking forward to this. But let me do the official introduction so people know who they're listening to, and then we'll jump in.
Sure.
Friends, today's guest, Barton Scott, is a biochemist. He's a nutritionist. He's a researcher. And for the past 6 years, he's been the founder and process developer behind a company called Upgraded Formulas, which I have some right here. Barton's passionate about helping people address the stressors of daily life, poor sleep, hormone issues, low energy, the toxicity of the modern world, the extreme lack of nutrients in our food and soil, and the nutrient absorption issues we all face. Mamas, is that us or what, mamas? Oh my gosh, we're so tired. We're so depleted. We need this help. And Upgraded Formulas it's almost like our second interview guest. So the company called Upgraded Formulas, that's a quantified wellness and nanotech company focused around performance and longevity with a focus on correcting mineral deficiency. And there's a whole category of mineral supplementation called stabilized nano minerals. So we're going to have to, figure out what that means and how it applies to us as tired mamas with kids who we just want to raise healthy kids. So yeah, thanks for being here, Barton. Tell me, what is your path? How did you get from, being a high schooler with some interests to being a founder of a company at this point?
Yeah, well, this is definitely for all the moms out there. In part because I'm so aware of all the deficiencies that mothers they develop when giving birth, right? You're just giving away all these nutrients. And then if you do that one time, two times, three times, and so on, wow. But even once is so much. And I felt that, a special connection with my whole family, and was born to older parents. And I think somewhere, maybe subconsciously, I felt like since my mom had me at 42, I probably took a lot of those nutrients, and frankly felt on the hook to help her with her health. And I don't think we ever talked about that, but she was always receptive, and I helped her slim down, although she was never really overweight. She had some weight to lose, again, probably because of having me in her 40s. In the 80s. So thinking about that's kind of where the story starts. I was an athlete. I was a wrestler. I played quarterback in football as well. I ran track, and I developed a lot of nutrient deficiencies. And I didn't know that that's what it was, but I had tremendous brain fog. So I'm a biochemist. I studied chemical engineering, got a degree in that, worked as an engineer for a while, became a nutritionist as well, started seeing patients, blended these lenses of athlete, nutritionist, biochemist, and then was always around successful entrepreneurs and thought, I can really solve this problem. This is something that clearly needs to be worked on. And what that is for every person listening, mom or not, is nutrient deficiency. We all have it, because we live in this fast-paced world. Our soil has 40% of the nutrients it had only, a lifetime ago, 80 years ago. So that, you think about that, 40% in 80 years, it's not sustainable. So we're going to have to be giving birth to innovators. So, i.e., our moms we can't afford for them to have nutrient deficiency. Because why? Well, the children are going to have nutrient deficiency, and they'll be more likely to have heavy metal toxicity. I'll say that one more time. Whenever you have any person, male or female, has nutrient deficiency, you will more likely, from a chemical basis, this is just like a law of the universe, you will attract and retain more heavy metals. It will lower your vibration, will lower your vibe. It will, quite literally. it will make you less likely to get pregnant, less likely to have ideal hormones, less likely to, or more likely to have hair loss, more likely to have brittle nails, more likely to have brain function that's not where you want it to be, dysregulated sleep, anxiety. All of these things are a blend of both mineral deficiency and heavy metal toxicity. Quite literally, what we're talking about is that periodic table that we all saw in 7th or 9th grade for the first time, whenever we saw it, and really got into it. And that is what we test for now as a company. And it's something that way back when I saw my results, my mother's results, my girlfriend's results, her dad's results, and we were all taking supplements that I had us on, and we were all chronically deficient in at least one thing. I was deficient in 3 to 5. And I remember thinking, wow, I'm in my mid-20s. I know a ton about nutrition. I'm a chemical engineer. I can learn anything, as is truly what I feel like I can do. And I'm having this problem. Oh, like, oh my God, wow, this has to be solved. And it will be tremendously valuable for people if we can really solve it. So we figured that out several years ago. We have a unique process that allows, and this is the most key part, may not sound sexy, maybe it does sound sexy depending on who you ask, but we have a unique process that allows magic to happen, really, when it comes to minerals, which is you don't have to digest them. It goes into absorption through the red blood cells into the body. So you replenish those missing nutrients, and then you feel better, you sleep better, your hormones are better. I gave a talk recently at PaleoFX. I'll be giving another talk in London in a week or two, and then on to a mastermind in Croatia where I'm speaking all on this topic that so many people are not aware of. I have a book coming out this year, because so many people just don't, even if they're just brilliant in other areas of health, they have no real visibility for some reason in this area. And it's just something I've been championing for about 6.5 years now. And then more than that since with research before starting the company. So yeah, there's so much that we can cover. The one thing that I have to make sure that I remember, if you'll allow me, is iodine. We have to talk about iodine, and we have to talk about how that is related to IQ for children, and that if you have iodine missing, or you're low in your iodine, let's say you're iodine deficient as a term, which you'll just have to assume that you are as a mom going in, and just dose, because there's no accurate test for iodine on the market. You can buy some, they're not accurate. And it's one thing we don't test for in hair. So, although we test for about 60 different elements. So knowing that is key, because imagine that, a 20-point different IQ, which is what we're talking about, if mom has an iodine deficiency. Child's going to have it. There's no magic that allows a mom with no iodine to give iodine, which helps brain development, to the child. It has to be there, right? Just like it has to be in the soil for it to end up in your apple or your steak, the cow ate through the grass, it's always limited to that, lowest. It's like you're limited by the slowest person on your team type thing. So understanding that's really key. So yeah, we can jump in anywhere where you want, but that's sort of the background. Yeah.
Well, I have about a dozen questions. Now, I promise we won't forget the iodine. That happens to be the one that was on my desk, and it's still sealed because I don't know how to use it. So we will not forget that. And I wrote it down in case I'm feeling brain fog. But I love that you jumped right in with the moms and how much we give, because we do. Yeah. We give all day long, but you're talking about in pregnancy and in birth, we literally give of ourselves. We give ourselves, and we build this new person, and then we are depleted. And so mamas, when you feel like you've lost brain cells, right? When you feel tired and run down because you have a newborn or you have a toddler, that is real. That is physiological. It's not just, wow, I'm tired because I'm chasing a kid around. So I love that you started there. What an interesting facet of your story that you had this kind of a guilt that your mother gave birth to you, in an older age. Now, 42 is not old, first of all. Let's just be really clear. with that.
In
That
the
might be
80s
my
it was.
birthday this year. So no, it's totally not
Totally.
old.
Totally. Just to give birth in the 80s, it was rare. Today it's not rare,
That's
but
true.
yeah,
That's true.
there's a
But you
lot of things
described
we
a
didn't
lot of
know then.
problems that we see in our world, reduced fertility, hormone dysregulation. And what I think I heard you say is that we're literally working with a short deck, that we have 60% fewer raw materials, 60% less minerals in the soil than 80 years ago.
40% less. So yeah, we have 60%
okay.
of, so we have 60% of the nutrients that we used to have, which
Got it.
is not going to work, because that means energy, weak hormones. So not as good of highs, like happy, also just more likely to be depressed, just chemically, because well, that mineral's just not there to make serotonin, for example, that feel good hormone.
Yeah.
You're missing this, and that, and people aren't testing. So we bring testing in, and we do it via hair with amazing consultations with nutritionists I've trained myself. So
Nice.
And then we have practitioners that come through our course, and they learn how to do this. So all of that's on our website at Upgraded Formulas. So yeah, I think that being able to view this whole world of health through this lens, no matter what any practitioner is doing, is a huge bonus. I've seen so many things missed because, or even though they were doing 10 other tests and they weren't doing this, because this is that overall survey of the periodic table, which makes up everything that you are made of, I'm made of, everyone listening, the computer, the table, the house, everything you can imagine is made up only of these elements. That's it. So why would we think, I've said this for years now, why would we think that it's okay to ignore that? And when you start to think of it from that way, you realize, oh my God, this is incredibly important, and you'd be right to think that.
Sure. I mean, in functional and integrative medicine, we talk about root cause a lot. And so you're saying like,
Yeah.
hey, the root is literally the building blocks from which we're made. So that's super cool. I love that you're a supplement company, but you start with testing. Now you mentioned the word hair. I don't know if people caught that because it was kind of in passing. Tell us about how you test hair and what that points to. What do the results tell you?
Yeah. So hair is really interesting in that, and a couple examples. We know that hair, for example, is great for drug testing, which, by the way, we don't screen for any of that. What we look at is minerals and heavy metals. Primarily, we want to look at the ratios of minerals and really understand deeply what's going on for a person. And as we start to correct those, everything else in the body starts to fall in line more and more. Person sleeps better, they have less anxiety. Literally anything you can name as a symptom is related to some deficiency or imbalance of a heavy metal. Period. End of story. Like it's so black and white. And it's not well known. So, I'm working really hard to help educate people, and that's why we're talking today, which is great. So I hope people will share this episode with 3 people that need to hear it, because we just can't get the word out fast enough. But people have incredible results going through this process. And I think really what you're asking is, how's it different than blood? How's it different than, say, what are we like, what are we basing this off of or against? And blood is us on our best behavior. Blood gets titrated. It gets by pulling from your bone marrow, your bone marrow, your organs, your soft tissues, to make sure the blood is perfect, or as close to perfect as possible, because if not, we die. Our organs immediately start to shut down and fail, and then death is soon after. Everyone's free from that. But I mean, that is how important blood is. So if you put the proverbial dipstick in the blood, as we do with all cars that have oil, and you check it, you're checking at the place where you're least likely to see a result that you would be able to correct the deficiency, right? Makes sense, right? So does that make sense then, that by the time you see a deficiency in blood, you could have spotted it years ahead of time and done something about it. And then, instead of spending $400 on skincare every month, you can be spending money on supplements. You can be spending money on testing, and then your skin gets great as a byproduct. Your hormones are great as a byproduct. You start, and then you solve whatever you're initially thinking, like, oh, I want to sleep better, which also wards off disease and things like that as you sleep better and better and better. You heal faster, you find your average weight, you're less likely to snack the following day because you slept well. It's just so beautiful how all of it intertwines. And I could go on and on and on and on. I have like several books to write about this, but wow, I'm just blown away with like the results that people get and the perils they face when they ignore it. It's like, so it's just incredibly obvious. So that hopefully that helps. That hair can be taken from scalp, underarm, pubic. All of those regions work just fine. And we have instructions on the site. So you take it to your hairdresser, your salon person, barber. Yeah. So.
Right. Well, and it's so nice too that you have trained people evaluating, because I don't even want to think about how much money and time I've spent on testing and then didn't really know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, oh, that just is the worst feeling. But what you're saying gives me so much hope. We can find problems before we even know that they're coming, right? And solve them, especially, of course, sleep is so important. And now, so what are some of the most common mineral deficiencies, and what kinds of issues are those linked to?
Mm-hmm. Well, we talked about iodine. 96% of people are deficient in iodine. That's one of our best-selling products. Interestingly enough, our manganese, upgraded iodine, both of those are very important. Manganese, not as many people know about, but it helps with soreness after a workout, thyroid function, mental, just all your mental processes, like retrieving memory, for example, and building neural pathways. Manganese is connected in that. And then, so we have a couple supplements that have that in it on our site. And then, yeah, magnesium is a big driver for a lot of people. The form doesn't matter for any of our products. I just want to say that straight away, because a lot of people have been, reading form, this form, that form for about a decade now. And that was only true for traditional absorption technology, which to me was incredibly boring. And because it was just not, it just doesn't work. They say, like, in the kitchen, only sharp knives are interesting. And that's really the approach I've taken with everything in my life is, well, if it's incredibly effective, I'll keep it in my life. And if it's not, I'll immediately replace it. And then what you get is this collection of, all these things working super well. So instead of settling.
Practical. So can we go there? Like, why does the old form of supplementation not work? Why is it boring, as you say?
Yeah, it's boring because it doesn't absorb very well, and that's due to particle size. So the size of the actual mineral particles, when they just come out of the ground, soil, and they're harvested, and they're, third-party tested like they should be, and, like a good, practitioner grade quality brand. I'm not going to name any names, but you can think of any number of brands there that you would really rely on. You think are well researched. All of that is just about what they're researching is, what is this good for? For example, what is magnesium good for? What is potassium good for? And then they're making sure that it's nice and clean. And to me, that's just a starting point. Then what do you do with it? Because most people have gut dysfunction, and they're going to have gut dysfunction for the rest of their life. Most people. And it took me a while in my 20s to accept that fact about 10 years ago. But because I was having issues then, and I was doing so many things right, I realized just the wear and tear of people, the lack of education, the stress, environmental toxins and triggers like water and air. Just most people, genetic difficulties are going issues. And if we have supplements, which we do now, that are uniquely designed to be able to absorb without digestion and be stable. That was the other thing, is like they had to be shelf stable, they had to be stable in the body. And what's really interesting now is that we use the test to prove that our supplements work, and which is really cool. So people that do a before and after test, that's on our website, on our main page, they start off with like 4 products and before and after test and consultation. So that's a great place to start, because you get to see where you were, where you're going, where you've been. And it's incredibly informative. Like, you have to have the map, right? And you have to know where you want to go. So our nutritionists start off by asking, okay, so tell me 3 things that you want to improve about your health, and in that, what are you struggling with most? And I feel like that in and of itself is huge, because most people aren't listened to ever to this point about their health, except maybe to their friend that can't really help them. So having this process approach is really key for children, for parents, for anyone really, at any age. We've done hair analyses on infants even that were crying incessantly, and then we found, oh well, they're toxic in this metal, they're very elevated. And then we start to push that out of the body by supplementing a certain mineral that is chemically similar, so it pushes that out, stops crying, gets back to living. It's elemental, it's a balance. So
that is a fascinating story. Now, you're a nutritionist as well as a biochemist. Can any of this be done with food, or are we just really stuck because of our soil quality?
Yeah, it's the soil quality. I mean, organic is not, doesn't mean it's full of nutrients. It just means that it's not full of pesticides. Right. So, that's all there is to it. We have to supplement if we want to have a good life. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, if we dialed back 100 or say 200 years when soil quality was better, before we screwed it up as a human race,
right?
Was the proper mineral balance and absorption and stuff possible then, and supplementation is needed now because of what we've done to the earth?
Yeah, we got really greedy with farming practices, and it doesn't look like we're going to change that largely fast enough. So we need to be, again, giving birth to innovators, as I say, because they will, if they don't have that low IQ from not having iodine, etc. This is a point where you stop in the podcast. This is your message, and you send it to your friend that's pregnant or getting pregnant or thinking about getting pregnant in a year or two. It takes about a year to replete an iodine deficiency in a lot of cases. So it's not an overnight thing. And anyway, it's incredibly important. My perspective too on that is that even if someone has Hashimoto's, they obviously, and again, in my perspective, need iodine, because it's the thyroid cannot make thyroid hormone without iodine and other minerals, which we have a whole blend in our peak thyroid formula. But I mean, in terms of that question, soil quality is one thing. Also, when we go back 200 years, then we're talking a time when our air quality was a lot better, and our water quality, assuming it came from a spring, was a lot better. So that's incredibly important to think about. The world is roughly 1,000 times more toxic than it's ever been in recorded history. Walking down the street here, in Austin, Texas, I have cadmium in the air from brake dust. There's all sorts of things I'm breathing in, even though, I'm aware of all these things being present. There's only so much you can do to block it. So minerals do help you protect against that, for reason why I mentioned earlier. So if someone missed that, they can go back and hear that again. Sure. But it's important to understand this big picture and the small picture of it too.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that makes sense. And let's go big picture. Part of me hates to go doom and gloom, but the other part of me knows that we have 5 times as many fear circuits as reward circuits in our brain. So we kind of need to talk about the scary stuff. Predictions are by, I forget if it's 2030, I hope it's not, but I think it's 2050, that like 1 in 2 children born will be born with autism. That's unsustainable. That's literally impossible for the human race to survive. And I think you have sort of been proffering a possible reason for that, a possible cause, is that with every generation, we have less to give. The mother has less to give. The child has less, the building blocks aren't as solid. There's not as many. And every generation, we're just going to get worse unless we make it stop, right? Unless we interrupt the pattern.
Yeah. We find that autism is linked to several different types of mineral deficiencies and also heavy metal toxicities that impair brain development as the child is developing. So on one side, you need things like iodine and other nutrients to grow the brain. And then you have these impeding elements that hinder brain growth.
Okay. Well, so we went big. Now let's go small, because iodine is very intriguing to me. I don't know that I've ever heard anyone say, and I read a lot and I interview a lot of people, never heard anyone say, we need more iodine. And in fact, there's iodized salt, which in my house, we fondly just call the cheap salt for Play-Doh, right? Like we use real salt without iodine supplementation. So give me a little history here. Like, where did people used to get iodine? Where can we get it naturally? And why is everyone deficient in it?
Great question. So people are deficient in it because they're not eating enough of it. They're not supplementing it, and they're not aware of it because they're not testing. And it's also it's in a small amount in the body, so you can't. Although it's incredibly important, you can't really test for it because it's in such a small amount. So same is true with boron. So we've taken that off of our tests a couple of years ago too. So again, you can find tests for that. Will they be accurate? No. So that's really the thing. But now, when there was a study done a while ago, for what it's worth, 6,000 people were shown to be iodine deficient, or 6,000 people, 96% were shown to be iodine deficient, some of which were already taking iodine during the study, and they were still deficient. So it really shows you, like, nearly 100% of people are low in this if they're in America. Now, Japan eats a lot of sea vegetables, which sea vegetables can come with heavy metals because it's not a mineral that, like with this, where it's lab tested for potency, purity, things like that. If you're buying seaweed, you don't know what else you're buying besides, there's some iodine. It was in the ocean. And it's not like you can somehow test that. Unfortunately, you're not going to make a slurry with seaweed and then run different types of testing on it. So there are things like that people can eat. Japan, for example, has the longest health span and lifespan of any country right now, right? What do? How much iodine do they eat in comparison to us, I wonder? Turns out about 100 times more per day than we do.
Because of seaweed and sea vegetables.
Yeah, different vegetables, mainly, sea vegetables. So, and now this doesn't mean that you want to do iodized salt. I don't believe in that. So you can stay with your Celtic salt, for example. And that, though, is going to get you a fraction of the way, because you still desperately need iodine. You desperately need all the minerals we're talking about, and we desperately need to be testing and not guessing, which is something we've trademarked, test don't guess. So this is really kind of the view for people is, if you're having any health issue at all, if you want to prevent health issues in the future, this is the path. Testing regularly, quarterly is best. And then changing your result, changing your protocol, both the foods you're eating based on, you're incredibly low in potassium. Probably a great idea to eat foods high in potassium, but it may not be that simple. You may also need to do this, and this to help that really absorb. So that, like you said, there's so many tests that people spend money on. They get either no consultation or subpar consultation. The action that follows is obviously no action or subpar action. And then before we had this solution, then it was, all right, well, let's say great action, great advice, but then the supplements weren't absorbing beyond about 25% per supplement taken. And that's not enough to replenish. It can keep you where you are possibly, but it's not going to replenish all the way. So then the symptom stays, and then your life stays in that sort of crappy mode, which no one wants to be in. I don't want people to be there. So yeah, we do that. We give back to charity water. I think I'm proud of the impact we're having, for sure. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it all makes a lot of sense. And when you talk about the minerals, you obviously, you see them as these like foundationary building blocks, but that's not all we consume in food. We've got vitamins and, plant polyphenols and all these other good things. How do minerals impact what our body does with the rest of the food we eat?
Well, it's a really good question. So with minerals, they activate all the enzymatic pathways in the body, which means that if you consume a bunch of vitamins, which you don't have any minerals somehow, the vitamins would be rendered useless because they won't be able to, all the enzyme pathways in the body won't be able to be activated. So that's incredibly important to understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So it really is the foundation of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Barton, I work with a lot of families struggling with picky eating. And, we've got kids with all sorts of aversions, whether they're sensory, they can be tactile, they might be visual aversions. And there's a certain group of kids who really dislike meat. And I mean, it just drives parents crazy, and they know that their kid's not getting enough protein. They're probably not getting enough iron. And we've had experts visit before who say, that a zinc deficiency can actually be one of the root causes of this meat aversion. And I would just love to hear you riff a little bit on zinc and protein and meat and how that all has synergy.
Yeah, that's common in people too that are vegetarian. And then you'll hear people that are vegetarian say, and we try to be diet agnostic with all of our recommendations. If you're doing something and it's great and you want to just plug the holes that everyone has on any diet. I gave a talk recently called Why All Diets Fail, because it doesn't matter what you're doing. Eventually over time, it will, the great results that you're having will peter off, they will trail off. And that's just because there's holes in whatever you're eating because of everything we just talked about. Right. So where were we? Yeah, so supplementing that.
Just how zinc in particular is related to protein, or if there are other minerals we need to think about.
Yeah, so zinc, that is true. And then molybdenum is also important. That's in our supplement called Upgraded Memory, along with manganese, phosphorus, iodine, boron. So, and again, you have to absorb it for it to matter. So it has our unique process behind it. I mean, there's so much around protein absorption. Stomach acid is something that people that we go over in our consultations with our nutritionist when someone does a hair analysis. So there's a lot of different ways that we can approach this and improve it. And it's all very important because it affects your metabolism greatly. We see a lot of women that don't eat enough protein or don't absorb enough protein, or both. So they, in particular, women fall subject to that, I find. I'm trying to be just relevant to this particular episode. And then but men too, really, because of low stomach acid, not chewing their food well enough, so not digesting, and not producing those enzymes through chewing that we get. So I chew everything really, except for water, maybe even water. Like smoothies where you're not chewing, you can have indigestion just because you produce no enzymes. because your body wasn't ready, because it's normally going to be like chewing, and then you're stimulating this whole system, right? So
So would you
that's
tell, I
important.
mean, some people love smoothies, like in some ways they're great. And in fact, that's
Yeah,
probably the only way I'm going to get, these liquid minerals into my kids is
that's
in
fine.
something where it has some flavor that'll hide it. So
Right.
best way to eat a smoothie is to swish it around in your mouth a bit and give your saliva a chance to hang out with the smoothie. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, from what I understand, the most important part is actually chewing. So your
Oh.
teeth need to hit teeth, basically. Um, and then that will stimulate your salivary glands and bile production and from the pancreas, all these things. So
Mhm.
yeah.
It's kind of like, I mean, that the mouth is the entrance to the system.
Hmm.
And if we bypass that, we break the system. The body doesn't
Right.
know food is coming. Gosh, that's fascinating. Now we've talked about a lot of stuff. I feel like, okay, if we're believing you, maybe we all run out and buy some iodine because that's what everyone needs. Maybe people can get on board with, okay, you got to test first, right, to figure out what you need. But what would you say? I mean, I know we can kind of go to upgraded formulas and do our research and look into what you offer, but what's your message of hope for parents? When we think about the doom and gloom and each
Yeah.
generation is getting more and more mineral deficient, what do you want to tell parents so that we can walk away going, okay, there is hope here?
Sure. I would say that, well, from a action standpoint, immediately start with test and consult. It's a no-brainer, and upgraded magnesium.
Hmm.
That makes just the biggest difference for everyone. It seems like we have a lot of people, doctors, practitioners, people that speak on stages and write books all around the world. Those are all friends and peers of mine, and I've seen them time and time again set new records on their Oura ring, their sleep tracker of any kind, in deep sleep, which is the lead domino in healing and repairing. So I know I've got to hop off here in about a minute and for a next call, but we also have a code for people, I believe, for 15% off. So give them that. And really around doom and gloom, the beyond that, what am I really saying there? I'm saying you can be in control of your health. You do have, and you don't need your doctor's permission. I'm here to tell you, you don't need anyone's permission. And you also have to be your biggest advocate, your family's biggest advocate for your health. So all of those things together are just very, very important to think about.
We definitely do need to be our advocate for our kids. And so thank you for that message. Thank you for that hope that we can be in control. Barton Scott from Upgraded Formulas, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Same here, Katie.
All right, Healthy Parenting Connector listeners, I'll see you next time.